Since the beginning of Pokémon, there's always been one gym leader that beats you so bad you question your entire childhood. Today we're going to be finding the hardest gym leader in every Pokémon game, starting with the original Red and Blue. Now to be clear, today we're asking the question, which gym leader provides the most consistently difficult fight in the game? And to answer that question for Red and Blue, most people would first jump to Sabrina. The reason I emphasize consistency is because sometimes starters make fights way harder or easier, and some gym leaders just have easily accessible methods that just completely trivialize any difficulty. Sabrina is not one of those trainers. For those uninitiated with Generation 1, all you really need to know is that Psychics effectively have no weaknesses, and this then combined with Alakazam's future special attack being its single special stat makes it a surprisingly bulky monster. There are some issues with Sabrina too, however. See, she won't always flex her power simply due to the game's horrible AI. And Alakazam only has one good attacking move, which is sometimes just hard for the AI to select. I've seen this thing go for a Reflect when it could have ended me, or even just spam Recover at full health. And while Sabrina may seem infallible, she's also extremely vulnerable to fast physical attackers. Charizard, Dodrio, Gyarados, Arcanine, Dugtrio, Scyther, Tauros, even Snorlax, Blastoise, Kangaskhan, Starmie, Hypnope, and Alakazam are all Pokemon that do very well in this fight. And this makes me question the generally accepted idea that she is the strongest. And Gym 2's Misty is another trainer worthy of consideration. For starters, fighting a Starmie at the second gym is just ridiculous. Gen 1 Starmie also benefits from the single special stat, which gives it 100 special attack and defense. In modern terms, its 535 base stat is stronger than the final stage starters. And of all the gym leaders, Misty also happens to use X Defend, which is the rare case where an X item actually benefits the leader. Outside of Ivysaur, your only decent options include Clefable, Oddish, Bellsprout, and Beedrill. And because Starmie has all attacking moves, there's less that can go wrong for Misty, which makes her more consistent than Sabrina. But overall, I do still think Misty has a lower difficulty ceiling, even factoring in the point of the game. Sabrina shows more room for error, but this inconsistency lies in her choices, which are external to the player. You can bring the perfect team to Sabrina, and sure, it might go in your favor, but it's just as likely that she spams Psybeam and lands multiple 1 in 5 chance crits. Sabrina just has way higher potential, and no matter how the fight actually goes, you have to prepare for the worst. And so with all that said, I just hope that this can add something new to what is an over 25-year-old conversation. If you guys enjoy these every game videos, please subscribe, but regardless, Sabrina is the hardest trainer in Red and Blue. Now in Pokemon Yellow, Pikachu makes Brock notably more difficult. He forces you to catch another Pokemon, but since Onix has extremely high defense, two of the game's best options, Mankey and Nidoran, their fighting moves don't overwhelm him quite like the Red and Blue starters. Yellow Brock is a serious fight, but certainly not the hardest. Now of course Pikachu does give you a slight advantage over Misty. Pikachu isn't even strong, but having a free electric type to get a Thunder Wave on Starmie can often be enough to guarantee a win. You can also pick up a free gift Bulbasaur and Cerulean for even more consistency. So basically, Misty stays the same, but you get more tools to make the fight easier. And while Sabrina may lose 2 Pokemon, in Yellow, she only gets stronger. Her true threats, Alakazam and Kadabra, both become level 50, despite the game's gym order and level curve being the exact same. And this makes it very realistic to be fighting Sabrina at a 15 level deficit. And so with such a big gap, her Alakazam is just so strong that the likelihood of taking it out quick becomes 0. And taking this matchup past 2 turns only does everything to benefit Alakazam. With stats that outweigh the player, a Reflect into a heal is very devastating, but then it also now has Psychic, which again has over a 1 in 5 chance of critting because of Alakazam and crit being based off of high speed. And now with Psychic, she has a 30% chance to drop your special. I find with Sabrina, this higher level doesn't make her linearly stronger, but actually like exponentially harder. Sabrina is without a doubt the hardest fight in Yellow. Now you can't talk Generation 2 without first looking at the 2-team terror that is Whitney. More than any trainer in maybe all of Pokemon, Whitney's Miltank is the embodiment of our childhood trauma over losing at Pokemon. It's a single stage Pokemon at the 3rd gym that outweighs you in stats. It's got Stomp as the flinching stab move. move. It has Milk Drink to heal, a track to make all your male Pokemon, probably your starter, miss half of the time. And of course, there's its dreaded Rollout, which works up to 480 power by the 5th hit. Whitney is a true terror to the inexperienced Pokemon player. But that alone doesn't make her the hardest. And that's because the game actually hands you a lot of easy ways to beat her. Geodude and especially Onix, the game's first available trade, are both guaranteed Miltank wins. An arena with Double Kick is just as effective. And let's also not forget that in Goldenrod, there is a guaranteed free traded female Machop that can basically solo her. There's the Dig TM available, which completely neutralizes her Rollout just north in National Park. You can use Bugsy's TM Fury Cutter to set up on Clefairy, or Faulkner's Mudslap to just accuracy drop Miltank. They even give you the Rollout TM on the route directly north of her gym. The issue with Whitney isn't that she has no counters. Her difficulty comes from the fact that it's the first time where you really need specific ones. And Whitney is notorious for new trainers because they go into the fight with an average team that has no real strategy. And so with this, I'm left to question whether she is the hardest in the game, especially when Claire exists. Gen 2's 8th gym leader Claire leads her team with 3 seemingly non-threatening Dragonair. With low stats, 1 Dragonair on its own is no problem. But all-knowing Thunderwave, these things act as an amazing roadblock to cripple your Pokemon before the real fight begins. They also have great coverage, which is super tricky because sometimes you won't actually know which one she sends out. All of this simply serves to trip you up before the actual problem. Claire's Kingdra is, in my opinion, the true terror of Johto. And the first issue that people often forget about is the ridiculous level gap. Gen 2's level curve flatlines from gyms 5 to 7, and so as your team's been struggling along for XP, you usually enter this fight 10 levels below Kingdra. Even worse is that Kingdra has no weaknesses. Even by the 8th gym, Gyarados and Seadra's Twister are the only 2 available super effective moves, both of which are obviously terrible. Even if every Pokemon on your team has paralyzed Cure Berries, her Dragonairs have Thunder Wave, every single Pokemon on her team has Dragon Breath with a 30% chance to paralyze, and in Gen 2, even electric types can be hit with Thunder Wave. And unlike Whitney, there are no simple counters to beat Claire. Whitney might be harder on a player's first attempt, but Claire is challenging no matter what. And it's for this reason that I truly do believe she is the hardest gym leader in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Now, Generation 3's Ruby and Sapphire are notable for being much easier than the more popular Emerald. Looking back, some of these gyms are just very weird. Like Watson is Surge 2.0 with a team of 3 Kanto Pokemon. Flannery can be tough, but she's also rocking 2 Slugmas, and then Tate and Liza only have 2 Pokemon. So with all that going on, I think it's actually Norman that is the strongest in Ruby Sapphire. He's got 2 slacking in this game, and I'm very well aware that, Protect basically just cheeses this fight, but it's not like you're just handed a Pokemon that learns Protect. And so all things considered, although there are definitely some holes to Norman's fight, I do think that in Ruby Sapphire, he is the hardest of the not so hard people. It's really Pokemon Emerald that deserves the discussion, where for starters, Norman is significantly more difficult. His lead spin may appear easy, but its Teeter Dance and Encore actually make it a great lead to disrupt potential sweep setups. Next, Vigoroth is just great at simply getting damage on the board and depleting Pokemon's HP. There's also Linoone, which with Belly Drum and solid speed is capable of sweeping nearly any team at any time. And then you've got to deal with the slacking, which yes, sure, you can cheese it, but you still have all that other stuff to deal with before you even get here. Watson is another gym leader that absolutely demands respect. Unless you brought a Mudkip. He leads with a Voltorb that knows self-destruct 7 levels before learning it. Then he's got a Magneton evolved 8 levels before it should be. This thing's running Stab Shockwave with 120 special. This is putting Misty Starmie to shame. There's also Electrike, and then after getting through all of this, you have to deal with his Manectric. It can howl to set up for a lethal quick attack, and Thunder Wave is always there to cripple you. Watson is very reminiscent of Whitney because he has absolutely insane power for his point in the game. What makes Watson easier than Whitney, though, is that the solutions to beating him are just handed to you. Bayleaf and Croconaw are actually quite good at soloing Whitney, but it's not quite as easy as just picking Mudkip and pressing the delete button. There's also Geodude, Hariyama, Breloom, so Watson is either an incredibly difficult or incredibly easy fight. And Flannery is another one worth noting. If she sets up the sun, even Pokemon that resist fire type will get one-shot by overheat. Her Torkoal also has Attract and the White Herb to make things even more complicated. There's also Winona, whose whole team may not be super tough, but her Altaria alone is enough to sweep. If this thing manages to get just 2 Dragon Dances in, you lose. And actually, on that note, even Brawly can pull a sweep if he manages to set up Bulk Up. Now, of course, no list is complete without Tate and Liza. Probably the most well-designed fight in the game. There are so many factors that contribute to making this fight difficult. You've got Earthquake spam for Claydol, which only hits your side of the field. There's Calm Mind setup, Fear from 2 of her Pokemon, Hypnosis from Lunatone, Sunny Day Solar Beam to catch Surf spammers, Light Screen, Confuse Ray. It's a very complex fight. Tate and Liza are very difficult, but in fairness, there are a lot of Pokemon you can catch at that point of the game to deal with them. There's also Juan's Kingdra, which is probably the single most threatening Pokemon in the Gym League, but given how simple it could be to use setup strats on one of his 4 weaker Pokemon, I don't think he's consistent enough to deserve the title. Guys, I love Emerald. I could gush about how great these gym leaders are all day. The top is between Watson, Norman, and the twins. Watson is by far the most unfair fight, but his counters are just so strong and mindless that he is not a consistently difficult fight. Norman is insane, but I think he suffers from dig and protect strats, cheesing him also quite a bit. But even more so than Norman, there is really no time where I go into a Tate and Liza fight feeling certain. Yes, you can make a team that destroys Tate and Liza, but the sheer amount of planning that this takes only furthers their case. A winning Tate and Liza strategy just involves a lot more moving parts. Every gym leader in Emerald can be difficult, but Tate and Liza's fight is the most consistently demanding, and for that reason, they are the hardest gym leader in Pokemon Emerald. Now in Fire Red and Leaf Green, the power of psychic types decreases, while the game's AI finally surpasses a negative brain cell count. These changes result in what is a ridiculously strong Misty. No longer can you lean on lucky AI decisions to cheek out an undeserved win here. Misty Staryu and Starmie also now have Water Pulse, which has a 20% chance to confuse the target. She also swaps Tackle for Swift so that you can't use Sand Cheese. Sand Cheese, you probably don't want to eat that. And if all that wasn't bad enough, Starmie now has Recover. So you can't even expect to reliably whittle down its HP with a big team. Fire Red and Leaf Green are known for being easy games, but this is one of the few exceptions, and man, is it a big one. Misty is a monster in Gen 3 and takes the title of hardest gym leader. Now moving into Generation 4, Fantina is notorious in Diamond and Pearl. In these games, she is the 5th gym leader, and this not only allows for her to have a more competent team, but it's at a point in the game that is typical of seeing the player underleveled. To lead, her incredibly tanky Drifblim has minimized strats. This is then combined with the risk of Omni Boost starting the fight with just a massive level of uncertainty. Next up, you've got to deal with her Gengar, which, reminder, in Generation 4 has the ability Levitate. And sure, it may be using physical moves, but this thing is still a monster. And then, if all that wasn't enough, there's Miss Magius. With Shadow Ball, Psybeam, and Magical Leaf, it just feels like it's able to crush kind of everything, and combined with the level of uncertainty that Evasion, Omni Boost, and Confusion adds, it's the hardest gym leader in the game. Now in Platinum, some things change and some don't. Fantina becomes the 3rd gym leader, so her team does get weaker, but it actually detriments the player more. Because you're only at the 3rd gym, you have way fewer options. And because you're leveled in the 20s, your Pokemon won't be fully evolved, while her Miss Magius still is. So if anything, Fantina might actually be harder here. Now in Platinum, Crasher Wake becomes the 5th gym leader, and people often say that he's quite difficult. Like, Gyarados can be a monster, but electric moves just make it so easy. And then, yeah, out comes Quagsire, but all you need to deal with that is a grass type. And sure, Floatzel is strong, but I don't think this team combines together to be near as threatening as Fantina. But there is also Candace, whose Frostlass is evil enough to to make it on this list. The strategy is a Bomb of Snow comes in third to set up Hail with Snow Warning. This makes Blizzard perfectly accurate, but Frostlass then takes even bigger advantage of this with its ability Snow Cloak. This makes all moves 80% of their original accuracy. It also knows Double Team to further take that down to 60% accuracy, 50% accuracy, and so on. She may be insane, but there are a ton of strategies that easily deal with her. And I think it's Fantina that still claims hardest gym. Now, Heart Gold and Soul Silver's gym leaders see a ton of improvements. Bugsy's Scyther gains the Technician ability while replacing the unreliable Fury Cutter with U-Turn. Unfortunately, the rest of his team kind of sucks, but this Scyther is still very scary. Another leader that's become more challenging is Morty. With the introduction of the physical special splits, Gengar's Shadow Ball is finally off using its pitiful attack stat, and Morty's entire team also benefits from now ignoring ground moves with Levitate. Claire also sees some changes, but I'm not sure if they really benefit her. By Gym 8, her now lead Gyarados is all but a free kill, and her Dragonairs will still try to cripple you, but with one less, berries become much more reliable, especially because everything loses Dragon Breath. Outside of that, the game's level curve is balanced better, so you should be closer to her level. Dragons are still incredibly strong in this game, but looking at the big picture, Claire suffers. And so, unfortunately, like the cool kid that you hoped peaked in high school, Whitney stays winning. Whitney now has Scrappy to hit Ghost with Stomp, plus a Lumberry to stop it from getting crippled. Clefairy also gains Cute Charm, which adds an additional level of uncertainty. Now, Whitney does lose one level while the player gets slightly more XP, but this is negated by all her buffs. And sure, there are a few more tools to fight her, but while Claire gets worse, Whitney stays on par or even gets better. And so for that reason, I will accept that in Generation 4, Whitney is the hardest gym leader. Now in Black and White, Lenora is the second gym leader, and she tends to blindside most new trainers. This may be the hardest second gym of all time. Her lead Herdier has Intimidate with Takedown, and the Watchog is just downright cruel. Upon Herdier going down, Watchog can come in to land a double power Retaliate. At 70 base, this move becomes not just 140, but actually 210 after its normal same type attack bonus. So basically, any Pokemon that doesn't resist this dies. It's also got great stats, Crunch, and Hypnosis. But Elisa is another notorious fight. She has two flying electric Emolgas, which are immune to ground and not weak to electric. Their typing alone makes them very tricky to deal with, since there are few good rock types at this point in the game. And this is even before we get to the main thing, which is Volt Switch. You send off a rock move to hit Emolga, it Volt Switches into Zebstrika. You use a ground move to hit Zebstrika, it switches to Emolga. You get the idea. And a lot of people will note that there are tons of ground encounters that completely neutralize her electric moves. And while that does stop her main strategy, it's still not enough, because these Pokemon will still take a beating from Emolga's Aerial Ace. And worse, because they have static, it's very likely that your ground type will get paralyzed before it can take on Zebstrika. And Zebstrika is a very strong Pokemon on its own. Elisa has a very tight strategy, and while there are ways to beat her, she always requires consideration. And for that, she is the hardest gym leader in Black and White. Now in Black and White 2, Elisa trades an Emolga for a Flaffy, and this really hurts her skill. Now we didn't mention him before, but even in Black and White, Clay is a trainer worthy of consideration. In Black and White 2, it's not so much that he steps up, but more so your options for Pokemon step down. Also, Lenora leaves and Elisa gets worse. Now, Cleve's team in 2 is weaker, but outside of the starter, there aren't a ton of options to deal with him. So overall, I kind of think Black and White 2's gym leaders struggle. And a lot of that is simply because you're comparing them to their stronger selves in Black and White. And this leads me to question whether the hardest gym leader is actually Charon. He may be the first, but setup strategies this early in the game are actually quite strong. Like, it's impressive how capable a first gym leader is of being able to sweep the player. And while I say this with uncertainty myself, I think Charon gets title of hardest gym leader. Now, Black and White 2 is still not an easy game, but its follow-up title, X and Y, certainly are. You've got Viola, whose only difficulty is on the grounds that she's the first gym. Corinna has a decent team, I guess, but it's right after you get a Mega Lucario? I have a tough time caring about this one because I don't like X and Y, but like maybe it's Valerie? She's a fairy type in the game that fairy type was introduced. Look, X and Y is just so easy. Comment down below what you think is the hardest gym leader, and I will choose the best comments and send you a free box of cookies on Amazon. Oh man, now we got Auras next. Okay, let's try to get through this one like relatively serious. In Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, mostly everything gets wrecked by the Lotties, which really limits us to gym leaders 1 through 5. With one Geodude and Nosepass, Roxanne is a joke. Brawly can threaten the player with bulk up, but he loses 2 levels. Like, I'm sorry, why did we choose to coddle these children? Now, next, Watson tries to be Elisa with Volt Switch strategies, but every member of his team gets wrecked by ground. And while Flannery's Torkoal is threatening, Slugma and Numel just aren't it. And so by simple process of elimination, I think it once again goes to Norman. Now, in Pokemon Sun and Moon, I think gym leader fights are more closely represented by the totems rather than the kahunas. And it's a much interesting question with totems because they're just harder. In Sun and Moon, the Mimikyu fight is one that's extremely tricky. It's a hard-hitting Pokemon to begin with, but also gets a free hit on the player. And the fight is also made really difficult by the fact that it's only weak to Ghost and Steel types, both of which are quite difficult to come by. But let's obviously not forget about Lurantis. To begin, its aura gives it +2 speed, while it has a power herb to first turn fire off a single turn Solar Blade. It can also call an ally cast form to set the sun for it. Solar Blade becomes 1 turn, while Synthesis then heals 2/3 health. X-Scissor hits super hard, and if all that wasn't scary enough, its Leaf Guard prevents all status conditions when sun is up, so you likely can't even cripple it. Lurantis is similarly insane in Ultra Sun and Moon. Here, the ally Trumbeak is replaced with Comfy, which also knows Sunny Day, only making the fight harder. Lurantis is the hardest totem in the Alola games, and arguably one of the hardest fights in the Pokemon franchise. Now, Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu are another set of extremely easy games, so it's no wonder that there isn't much competition here. Koga actually sees a notable improvement with Protect Toxic strategies, but it's not quite enough to claim the crown because Sabrina just brings such a competent team here. She's got solid type diversity with Jinx and Slowbro, good stats. Yeah, Alakazam only has Psychic and Nightshade, but it doesn't matter. Sabrina returns to her pedestal as hardest gym leader in Let's Go Eevee Pikachu. Now, if we're talking Sword and Shield, we should probably talk Rayhan. This is a double battle, which makes it instantly harder because the player's team isn't optimized for this format. He leads a Gigalith with Sandstream, which sets up Sandstorm, giving it an additional 50% special defense. Flygon is the paired lead. It has Thunder Punch to deal with water types and Steel Wing to handle Fairy and Ice. His Sandaconda can also activate Sandstorm with Sandspit. And lastly, of course, his Duraludon is just an absolute monster. Like, to give you an idea of how crazy this fight is, we did a video where we simulated every single major trainer fighting each other, and this team was so good even in singles that it ranked higher than his Champion Cup team. Listen, sure, yeah, I know, Opal, questions, okay, I'm sorry. It is just no question, Rayhan is by far the hardest gym leader in Generation 8. Now, in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Fantina is on par with her Diamond and Platinum team, but the game offers more tools to deal with her, making her overall slightly easier. At the same time, the third gym leader, Maylene, becomes kind of cracked. Like, Lucario was always difficult to deal with, but it gets Drain Punch equipped with a Big Root, making what was before just an offensive weapon actually quite hard to take out. So I really respect the Maylene fight, but at the end of the day, I think it still has to go to Fantina. Now, Legends Arceus doesn't have gym leaders. I suppose if you counted Volo, he would obviously get the title, but you probably shouldn't. So I think most fairly, the title goes to Kamado. Is that fair either? I don't know. Legends Arceus is hard to deal with, so please just leave me alone. So let's move on to Generation 9 with Scarlet and Violet. Now, the Psychic leader Tulip is notably strong, and I actually think this has a lot to do with her secondary fairy typing. And while she has a pretty serious team, I don't think she's that consistently difficult. I would argue the Larry Gym fight is much harder. Facade Staraptor is definitely a machine, but of all the game's gym leaders, it is once again coming down to that damn Miss Magius. A Watcher lead to counter ground types, followed by a defense boosting Belly Bolt with Water Gun, and then an Intimidate Luxio. This is everything you have to get through to then finally deal with a Terra Electric Miss Magius. A final stage Pokemon with no weaknesses at the 3rd gym. Ladies and gentlemen, it is for these reasons that Iono is the hardest gym fight in Scarlet and Violet. Thank you guys so much for watching, and gang, making it all the way through. Please subscribe, and I will see you later. Peace.